Today, we're going to jump back in time, about 2,500 years actually, to dig into a story about a problem that feels incredibly current, that search for peace of mind. It's all about this one guy who had literally everything you could possibly want, but was still just completely tormented by this deep, nagging anxiety.
So, these are the words of our main character, King Ajātaśatru. I mean, think about it. This guy is a powerful ruler. He's got wealth, a massive army, total authority, and yet he's haunted. He calls it an untimely sorrow, this constant dread he just can't shake. And his question, well, it's a question we all ask, right? How do I get out of my own head?
Alright, so here's the game plan for this explainer. We're going to follow the king's entire journey. We'll start with his troubles, then check out the super frustrating answers he gets. After that, we'll see his big meeting with the Buddha, a pretty dramatic confession, and finally, what he discovers about having a truly still mind.
Okay, so let's set the scene and meet our protagonist, King Ajātaśatru. He's the ruler of this ancient Indian kingdom called Magadha. And you know, from the outside looking in, his life seems perfect. But on the inside, it's a different story. He's in total turmoil, just eaten up by this deep unease that all his power and money can't touch. So what do his advisors do? Well, they try the usual stuff. They're like, hey, let's throw some more parties, more entertainment, maybe even a military campaign to take your mind off things. But you know how that goes. They're all just temporary fixes. That underlying anxiety, that untimely sorrow, it always came creeping back. And that's when the king realized he didn't need a distraction. He needed a real answer. So, the king decides it's time to get serious about finding some wisdom. He makes a plan to visit the 6 most famous spiritual and philosophical teachers of his time. I mean, these guys were the intellectual rock stars of their day. Surely, he thought, one of them has to have the key to ending all this suffering. But, oh man, his search was just incredibly frustrating. You can just imagine him sitting there. One teacher tells him, hey, don't worry about it. Actions don't have consequences. There's no good, no bad, nothing. Another one says, look, everything is predetermined, so there's nothing you can do about your suffering anyway. A third one claims that when you die, poof, everything's just gone. Not one of them gave him a practical way to find peace, right here, right now. And this is where the king just nails it with this brilliant metaphor. He says, it was like asking about a jujube and being answered with a melon. He was asking this simple, direct question, how do I find peace? And they were handing him these huge, abstract, philosophical theories that were totally useless for his actual problem. He wanted a piece of fruit he could hold, and they gave him a melon. So he's completely discouraged, right? He's pretty much ready to give up. But then his personal doctor, a guy named Jīvaka, has one last idea. He says, hey, there's one more teacher, the Buddha. He's staying nearby in this quiet grove with his disciples. The king is skeptical, but he agrees to one last shot.
Now this is where it gets really interesting. Look at the contrast here. The king rolls up with this huge procession. We're talking 500 war elephants, torches, a whole entourage. It's this massive display of worldly power and noise. But as he gets closer to the grove, he's hit by this silence. A deep, profound silence. He actually gets scared. He thinks it's an ambush. Because how could over 1,000 people be so completely quiet? And that silence, that was the first clue, the first part of the answer he was looking for.
So the king finally gets to the Buddha, and he asks the same question he's asked everyone else, but he's smarter about it this time. He asks, is there a visible fruit, a tangible result of this spiritual life that I can experience for myself, right here, right now? This is so crucial. He's not asking for some theory about the afterlife. He wants a result he can actually verify. And instead of a melon, the Buddha gives him a clear, actionable path. It's like a training program for the mind. And it's got 3 stages: morality, concentration, and wisdom. It's not a philosophical debate. It's a blueprint, a logical progression where every step builds on the one before it. So let's see how this blueprint works. Step 1, morality. This is basically about creating a baseline of inner calm by just committing to not causing harm. Makes sense, right? You can't really develop a peaceful mind if your actions are creating chaos for yourself and for other people. This is the foundation. You got to pour the concrete before you can build the house.
Okay, now this next part is just brilliant. Look at how the path describes this step. It's all about overcoming the mind's biggest obstacles, but it's framed as liberation, as freedom. Letting go of constant desire, it's like being freed from a massive debt. Releasing anger, It's like being cured of a painful disease. Escaping that restless, worried mind, it feels like being freed from slavery. These aren't just ideas, they're tangible shifts you can actually feel.
And once the mind is that stable and clear, the third fruit, wisdom, just naturally starts to bubble up. The text talks about these deep insights into how reality works. Now, the ultimate prize here isn't about getting superpowers or anything like that. The real goal, the ultimate fruit, is achieving the complete and final end of all that mental static, all that suffering.
So as the king is listening to this clear, logical, and really hopeful path, you can just imagine something is shifting inside him. He is so moved by this vision of purity, by the real possibility of freedom, that he feels like he can finally talk about the real reason for all his pain.
And here it is, the climax of the entire story. The king confesses that his untimely sorrow, it wasn't some vague existential dread. It was the crushing guilt from an absolutely horrific crime. He had killed his own father, the king before him, just to take the throne. This is the secret that's been poisoning his mind this whole time.
And what does the Buddha do? He doesn't condemn him. He responds with this incredible compassion. He acknowledges how heavy the crime is, for sure, but he points to the power of the confession itself. He says that to see what you've done wrong, to own it, and to decide to change, that is the definition of growth on this path.
And right there, in that moment of confession, the king experiences the first real fruit of the path. By dragging his darkest secret out into the light and meeting it with acceptance instead of denial, that massive burden is just lifted. The text puts it so beautifully. His mind finds patience, and his dharma eye, his ability to see things clearly, opens for the very first time.
So, what's the big takeaway from this whole journey? What is this fruit of the still mind that the king was so desperately searching for?
The story wraps up with this verse, and what it's really saying is that of all the things you can chase, power, money, pleasure, you name it, the path that leads to cleaning up your own mind and finding wisdom is by far the most valuable thing there is. The king started out trying to solve an internal problem with external stuff. He ended up discovering the real answer was a path inward.
And that leaves us with the core question of the story, one that is just as relevant today as it was 2,500 years ago, isn't it? King Ajātaśatru's journey really forces us to look at our own lives and ask, where are we looking for happiness? Are we looking for it in all the fleeting distractions the world has to offer, or are we looking for it in the profound, lasting peace of a still mind?